live stream.
Okay. Pwede na
Preparing
tayong
to live
magpapasok.
stream.
Good evening. Welcome to the Philippine Geographical Society Lecture Series 2021. This is the 6th lecture series that we are conducting this year. The PGS LS is a project collaboration between the Philippine Geographical Society and the UP Department of Geography. My name is Kathy Ilustre and I will be the moderator for this event. Before we proceed, please allow me to iterate a few of our house rules. During the presentation, attendees will be on mute, but we encourage you to interact with our online community, attending this session by typing your comments and questions in the Zoom chat box or through our social media accounts in Twitter and Facebook. Questions will be addressed during the open forum. This lecture is also being simultaneously streamed in the UP Department of Geography YouTube channel. Also, please note that this meeting is recorded and will be made available for viewing after the event. And just to give you a heads up, we will be taking a group photo before we end the meeting. So please be ready to turn on your video for that activity. To give the opening remarks, I would like to call Professor Eman Garcia, President of the Philippine Geographical Society.
Hi, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Welcome once again to another episode of the PGS Lecture Series 2021. On behalf of the Philippine Geographical Society and the UP Department of Geography, I am delighted to welcome everyone in this evening's lecture. The PGS Lecture Series is part of our objectives to promote geography in lieu of the actual National Conference on Geographical Studies, which we conduct annually. Through this, we hope to highlight the different geographic researches being done by our fellow geographers and allies in the field. This session is extra special because our invited speaker is a close friend, a colleague in the department, and a fellow PGS Board of Trustees. She will be sharing with us her research on mining, hazardscapes, and risk perception. And tulad ng ginawa natin before, we made the word cloud derived from our registration in this lecture. Here, we see words such as extraction as the dominant, and then nandyan din yung risky, extractive, resources and minerals. It's also quite interesting to see words as power, sustainability, regulated, and most especially, beauty. Paano kaya ito i-make sense ng ating speaker this evening? On this note, I again would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And as always, I hope we have a very special and productive lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Eman Garcia. And now, I am pleased to introduce our speaker for this particular event. Dr. Ocampo is an assistant professor of the Department of Geography at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, who specializes in political ecologies and rural geographies with a particular focus on risk perception, socio-natural hazards, and disasters. Her research also touches on the link between indigenous knowledge, and resource management. Dr. Ocampo currently sits as coordinator for the social sciences for the Tri-College Philippine Studies program and as a member of the Board of Trustees of the Philippine Geographical Society. She is also part of the team for the Laboratory for the Analysis of Places, Landscapes, and European Countrysides at the University of Liège. She is currently in the steering committee of the International Geographical Union Commission on the Sustainability of Rural Systems. Please give a warm welcome to Professor Lou Angeli Ocampo.
Thank you, Miss Cathy. Ayan, saglit lang po ah. Allow me to share my screen. Okay, so can you see my presentation?
Yes, Luan.
Okay, thank you. So, good evening, everyone. I would like to thank you for being here today. I would also like to thank the Philippine Geographical Society and the UP Department of Geography for giving me this opportunity to present some of the findings from my dissertation. Thank you also for the very interesting word cloud. So I saw extraction, extractive, risky, destructive, and we are going to look into those words as I go along with my presentation. Okay, so my research was part of a collaborative project between Belgium and the Philippines entitled Local Adaptation, Resilience, and Interpretation of Socio-Natural Hazards and Environment Management in the Philippines. The project ran from 2014 to 2019, and I conducted my fieldwork in 2015, so medyo matagal na. But still, nothing much has changed in Itogon except for the banning, total banning of small-scale mining activities after the big landslide that took place in 2018. But now the miners are actually asking the government to allow them to work once again in the mines in Itogon. Okay, so I did my field work in Itogon, Benguet. Itogon is a mining town around 10 kilometers from Baguio City. So Itogon being located in the Cordillera mountain range is mountainous, as you can see on this photo, with deep valleys and steep slopes. It is known among the locals, or they pride themselves, their municipality as the land of golden opportunities due to the importance of gold mining as an economic activity both among the locals and migrants. Marked on the map are the two biggest mines in Itogon. We have here Antamok, the Antamok mines, and the Balatok Akupan mines. Both are owned by the same mining corporation. Okay, so as part of the conceptual frameworks that I used in my dissertation, I used the concept of hazardscape. So in geography, the concept of hazardscape of landscapes is very important. We look at landscapes as sites of human-environment interaction, of struggles and conflicts, of triumphs and failures. So the use of hazardscape allows us to have an analytical lens in understanding the spatiality of risks through the inclusion of environmental processes, places, and people. So according to Mustafa, hazardscape is a way of seeing that asserts power and is a socio-environmental space where the gaze of power is contested and struggled against to produce a lived reality of hazardous places. So when we talk about landscapes, we talk about the visible and invisible expressions of human-environment interactions. But what we do not often realize is that our interaction with the environment is influenced by power relations, by various events that took place in the past, and some of those events are also being experienced today. So In terms of hazardscape, for example, you would realize that some people have access to certain types of resources while some do not. Some communities are exposed to pollution and various risks, while some communities enjoy more habitable and safe surroundings. The use of the concept of hazardscape in this study allows us to understand the speciality of risks by looking at different factors that transform Itogon. Okay, so in this presentation, I will discuss how hazardscape reflects centuries of mining activities and struggles over land and resource access, especially among the residents whose dispossession persists. Okay, so why Itogon? Please take note that Itogon is very interesting because of the interaction of three important characteristics. Number one, Itogon is mineral rich. So at the national level, well, actually globally, the Philippines is the fifth most mineral rich country in terms of gold, copper, nickel, and chromite, and ranks 22nd in the world's gold producing countries in 2017. So among the first commercial mining activities were conducted in Itogon. However, while we are more familiar with large-scale mining companies or large-scale mining operations, we have to take note that in the Philippines, small-scale mining industry comprises 75% of the country's gold production. This is just an estimate. It's very difficult to get hold of a reliable data due to the illegal nature of most small-scale mining activities in the country. And having said that, Itogon is part of the Baguio Mineral District. Diba, we are familiar with somehow with the history of Itogon of Baguio and how it was developed by the Americans and how mining started in that area. Anyway, so Itogon is part of that mineral area in the Cordilleras. Another important characteristic of Itogon is that it is naturally landslide prone. So if you're going to look at the map in the middle, this one is from Project NOAA. Most of the area is in color red. So based on the prescription of NOAA, this area should be devoid of human habitation or any dwelling zone. But of course, we can see that some areas are in red while some are in yellow and in orange. Based on the classification of the Mines and Geosciences Bureau, areas with high landslide susceptibility rating have active or recent landslides and tension cracks that would directly affect the community. Those with steep slopes and drainages that are prone to landslide damming are also highly susceptible to landslide. So in the Philippines, CAR is the most landslide-prone region, and Benguet is among the most landslide-prone provinces. So in this area, shallow landslides are the most common, and they are often triggered by rains. So yung experience ng landslides, as we will also see later on, ay factor of topography and climate, because most of the landslide events, tunnel collapse, ganyan, occurred during a typhoon or during periods of long incessant rains. Okay, so the third important feature of Itogon is that it has developed into a mining community. It has a population of around 60,000 in 2015. It is home to the Ibaloy and Kankanay indigenous groups. And with them, there are also Ilocanos and other migrant groups from other neighboring provinces who also rely on small-scale gold mining as their main source of livelihood. So if you're going to look at the population growth in the area, you would see how the increase in migration coincides with periods of gold booms and the increase of the price of gold in the global market. And we also have to take note that, as I think I've mentioned this before, that small-scale mining is largely illegal because by law, you must secure a permit And not just the permit, now small-scale mining activities are only allowed in areas designated as minahang bayan. Okay, so some information lang, additional information. Artisanal and small-scale mining, or ASM, provides employment to around 30 million people worldwide. In the Philippines, there's an estimated 300,000 to 500,000 small-scale miners operating in 31 provinces. So kung tutuusin, mas maraming involved sa small-scale mining than large-scale mining activities. So in Benguet, there's an estimated 24 to 27,000 miners. And of course, most are considered illegal. So sabi ko nga kanina, for small-scale miners, mining is only allowed in minahang bayan. Pero as of 2019, only 29 permits were granted in different parts of the country. In Itogon, 2 lang yung recently approved. And there are around 100 small-scale mining associations in the area. So in terms of legality talaga, marami ang considered as illegal miners. Okay, so ang question ko now is, how do you balance or, di ba, yung conflicting use and value of the land in Itogon? It is mineral rich, and at the same time, it is landslide prone. And you have a population of miners who rely on small-scale mining activities in the area. Okay, so let me give you a brief history of mining in Itogon. This is important to know, especially when we talk about hazardscape, the idea of dispossession, and how these things affect the current small-scale mining system in the area. Okay, so gold mining, based on archaeological and historical records, as early as 400 BC, ayan, yung mga signs of mining in some areas in the Philippines. Tapos prior to Spanish colonization, nakikipag-trade na ang Philippines with neighboring countries using gold. And traditional mining activity exists among Ibaloy and Kankanay. So take note ha, mining was not introduced in the area. Corporate mining was introduced, pero yung mining as an activity, ginagawa na talaga siya ng indigenous people, especially because very rich ang Itogon with gold nga. They use placer and lode mining. When we say placer mining, this is done in the river. So according to accounts noon, during the rainy season, women and children would go to the rivers, ganyan, to collect rocks, mga small rocks, ganyan, na may mga gold ores. And then they crush the rocks, ganyan, to get the gold. So ganun. And they also practice lode mining, yung nag-follow ng gold veins. So they also, how do I say this? May indigenous knowledge din in place about gold mining. They elders claim that they can identify areas with gold just by looking at them. May tinatawag silang, may peacock sheen silang tinatawag. They don't require laboratory testing, ganyan, to know if an area has a gold vein. So sa kanila, they know that. However, ang Spanish noon, they were not, while very interested sila sa gold, doon sa lugar, nakita nila na ayun nga, may mga accessories made of gold ang mga tao, ganyan. They were not able to penetrate the area. And gold then was not the main activity. It was gold mining, sorry. Mining is only being done to supplement other economic activities. They only mine so they can trade with the lowlanders. So may account pa nga nasabi, parang sobrang backward daw ng mga tao sa Cordilleras because they don't know how rich their land is. Pero that's not true. Tinatago nila daw noon sa mga Spanish yung mga key mine sites nila. And ayun, hindi talaga kasi siya yung main activity nila. Ang malaki ang naging impact sa area is when the Americans came. So sila yung mas nakapasok, may iba silang strategy. Anyway, they were able to gain entry to the area and identify lands for mining. And in-apply nila ito for patent. So 1903, in-establish yung first mining company in the country in Itogon. And ayun you have American prospectors coming in and identifying lands and applying. I keep on mentioning applying for patents kasi this is very important kasi hanggang ngayon the big mining company in the area, the big mining company's basis for ownership in the area was the gold patents applied for before. And yung mining patents na yun, mas nauna sila than the 1935 Constitution, than IPRA, than the Philippine Mining Act by EO 79, yung mga other laws na relating to mining and small scale gold mining. So ibig sabihin, hanggang ngayon, a big portion of Itogon, not just Itogon, including the entire Benguet, ay largely owned by a single company. Okay. However, by 1980 to 1990, nag-decline ng gold production. So I think the company declared bankruptcy. Sobrang mura ng bentahan ng gold. Some of their mines were destroyed by the 1990 earthquake. May mga mines sila that got flooded. Ganyan. So totally nag-stop sila. When they stopped, yung mga former employees, ganyan, and other miners in the area, pumasok dun sa sa mga properties nila para ituloy yung mining. So for a time, nagka-problema sila, pinapasok sila ng small scale miners. They cannot protect their entire property kasi nga ang lalaki nito. So what they did was, they initiated the Akupan Contract Mining Project. Pero before I go to Akupan Mining Project, so after pala the decline of the corporate gold production, yung sa ilalim, very costly compared sa prices, they shifted to open pit mining. So again, from underneath, nagpunta sila sa surface. So they did open pit mining for 5 years. Kaya lang totally, syempre, ayaw ng community because it was really destructive. According to interviews nga, we have indigenous people complaining na yung mga sacred sites nila, watersheds, lahat yan, deadma, yung company, they mine those areas. Kaya nga, issue na nga rin, sabi, ang hirap magpasa ng indigenous knowledge, especially kung wala na yung mga lands na tinutukoy nila, alin yung paano pag-aralan yung flow ng water, mga ganyan mga bagay-bagay. So the area that has undergone open pit mining was completely destroyed. So anyway, ayun, moving forward, they introduced the Akupan Contract Mining Project. So while tapos na yung operations nila, this allows small-scale miners to enter legally their mine sites and mine on their behalf. Ganyan. Kaya lang, this work in Akupan, remember the map earlier with Akupan and Antamok? Sa Akupan natuloy siya, pero sa Antamok hindi. Nagkaroon sila ng issues with the mining associations there. Pero this type of setup was built on the idea na of subcontracting small-scale miners. So how does it work? Binibid nila yung permit to mine, tapos yung successful bidders will be able to conduct mining activities. Kaya lang, ang issue kasi dito is before you can avail that, you have to have capital. So sino yung may capital na ito? Diyan papasok yung mga mining financiers. And the mining financiers are not necessarily locals. Or some are locals, powerful locals, politicians, ganyan, outsiders. Actually, there were accounts nga of Korean and Chinese businessmen buying gold from them. mas preferred actually nila ang magbenta ng direkta, no? Kasi pag dadaan yan sa government, ayun, may subject to taxation. Anyway, somehow this type of subcontract mining develop. So yung mga miners mo before, medyo na-reduce yung participation nila as mere sources of labor. So para lang makapasok, sige, they would find someone with money, ganyan. So in terms of hatian, ayan, iba't ibang sharing scheme. Pero ganun iba na yung level of participation nila. Say for example, if you're going to compare it with how mining is done before, na community or family activity siya, may mga sharing scheme sila to help other members of the community. So may nag-share sila ng mine tailings nila to old people, mga ganyan mga bagay-bagay. Ngayon wala. Ang titawag nila dito is pordia. So now ang nagiging nila is binabayaran sila every day. And even yung mga indigenous miners natin were forced to enter into these kinds of activities kasi wala na rin silang wala na rin silang access dun sa mga mineral lands na ito. Yung iba walang kapital, ganyan. So pati sila kasali na doon. Anyway, so sige. So now, if you're going to Itogon, you would see that this is the common practice na we would have financiers, we would have miners, mining in different areas. May surface miners ka, and meron, mamaya I'll show mo photos, and meron kang subcontract miners working in abandoned mines. Okay, so imagine ngayon the landscape of Itogon. It has undergone corporate surface, tunnel, and block caving mining. Ayan, it was subjected to open pit mining, and now you have underground mining and surface mining. So itong mga photos, I'll just explain some of them nando. Ito yung isa sa mga abandoned mines ng company. So makikita ninyo mas malaki pa yung yung tunnel, kaya pang pumasok ng tractor, yung mga facilities, I think concrete pa yung yung beams nila. Tapos, ayan, once you go inside, nagba-branch out na yan into smaller mines. So ito yung dun sa underground mining done in abandoned mine sites. This one in the middle, yan ang isa sa mga examples ng surface mining. So when you go to Itogon, makikita nyo so bundok siyang ganyan, may maliliit na butas. Kung may camera kayo tapos i-zoom in nyo, makikita nyo na mga mine tunnel sila and may mga tao doon sa loob. So, sige. Who are the miners? So, as I've mentioned earlier, we have the Ibaloy and Kankanay miners. They form associations usually composed only of Ibaloy and Kankanay. And then you have local residents. Okay, interesting itong idea nila ng local residents because even before you have migrants from neighboring provinces Mountain Province, Ifugao, ganyan, going to the area to participate in mining activities. So nung corporate mining activities pa, may mga ganyan na. So tapos kahit nagsara, they chose to stay in Itogon. So for them, local residents na rin sila. Ang pinaka naging cut-off ng mga taga-Itogon noon is 1987. Ayun, bago nag-decline talaga yung corporate mining activities. Bago nagsara yung company. So yung mga miners na nandoon na, regardless of origin, are now considered as local residents. Pero kasi, they are not the only migrants in the area. Sabi ko nga, yung mga financiers, sometimes they would bring their own men or they would bring their own workers to work in the mines. Kaya nga, nandoon din yung increased competition for work, ganyan, for mineral lands. Okay, yung pinakita ko kanina, itong nasa, yung may malaking tunnel, sabi ko sa may Antamok. So those are subcontracted miners, and in their case, most miners are migrants from other provinces. So yun nga, Ifugao and Mountain Province ang pinaka-common. And then other than those, we have the private miners who are not members of any association. So parang dito, so yan yung mas kung saan-saan din mo makikita. And ano lang din why mining attracts workers from different parts of the Cordilleras, kasi mining does not discriminate based on age and educational attainment. As long as you are able, makakahanap ka ng trabaho sa Itogon. In fact, may mga naging respondents ako sa survey who were college graduates, pero they prefer to work in the mines. Okay. So what about the social natural hazards in the area? So a short story lang about how my dissertation topic evolved. Initially, when I went to Itogon, so may mga key informant interviews, ganyan, I was asking about landslides. Tapos parang sa kanila, they're not really scared of landslides in the sense that they see it as something natural. Na it's not really related to mining. Kasi di ba kahit naman tayo pumupunta ng Baguio, ganyan, sometimes you would see areas na may mga shallow landslides. So it's quite common, especially during the rainy season. So sa kanila, it's something natural, na regardless of the activities in an area, pwede magkaroon ng shallow landslides. Tapos hanggang sa lumalabas sa usapan, sabi yun nga, hindi nakakatakot yung ganong types ng landslides, pero ang nakakatakot ay tunnel collapse, ground subsidence, and sinkholes. So hindi na siya yung natural, di ba? Pinag-uusapan natin kanina, the area is naturally susceptible to landslides due to topography, due to climate, ganyan-ganyan. Lumalabas na merong anthropogenic factors na dito sa mga hazards na mas pinangangambahan nila. So yun nga, tunnel and mine collapse, ground subsidence, and sinkholes. So sa photos, ayan, common na makikita ninyo, may mga houses na nag-tilt na, ganyan, nagka-crack. Ito, next photo. Ayan, may mga walls na nagka-crack. Itong photo na to ay church tsaka bahay na nasira ng landslide. Ito doon sa isang area yung pinuntahan namin, may malaking bato na nasa baba. Kung mag-zoom in kayo, titindin nyo maigi, ito ay hagdan. So hindi ko na alam kung ano yung itsura ng pinanggalingan niya, pero may mga ganong talaga, hazards na nagaganap, na present doon sa Itogon. Ito yung sinasabi nila na sinkhole, This happened in 2015 after Typhoon Lando. Merong isang 20-meter wide sinkhole in Verac, Itogon that swallowed several houses. Walang casualties dito, pero may accounts from the residents na before it happened, nakakarinig talaga sila ng maagos na tubig underneath. And it turned out na sa ilalim pala niyan ay merong diversionary tunnel. May mga tubig kasi na dinadivert papunta dun sa mga mines kasi kailangan nila ng tubig. So kung tutuusin, may complex web of mine tunnels underneath Itogon. Ayan. So ito yung mas familiar tayo, the Itogon landslide in September 17, 2018. Ayan, actually, itong lugar na to, dito rin ako nag-conduct ng survey before. So ayan, nakita niyo yung photos na pinapakita ko kanina about the abandoned mines. Itong area na to yun. Sino yung mga naging casualties ng malaking landslides? Ayan, naalala yung sinabi ko kanina, di ba? They were mostly migrant miners occupying abandoned structures in the area. Kasi before, sa mga commercial mines natin, may mga tinatawag na bunk houses to accommodate the miners. So may mga buildings talaga dyan. So doon sila tumitira, and base din doon sa sa kwento ng mga residents, kwento ng mga nandoon, yung mga tao na naapektuhan nito, they actually evacuated. They were asked to evacuate. They did. Pero yung pinuntahan nila na concrete structure din, yun nga, abandoned na, na bunkhouse, yung area na yun yung bumagsak. Ganyan. Some photos pa. Ayan, ito yung mines before, these photos were taken in 2015 and that happened in 2018. Just to give you an idea on what it is like to work in those abandoned mines. So in Antamok, according to interviews, there were more than 1,000 migrant miners. So marami yan. Parang ang konti lang nila sa photos, pero marami yan. And before they enter the mines, kailangan nilang magbayad ng fee, 15 pesos. Ayan. Yung pera, iniipon yon para pang-maintain ng lugar nila, ganyan. Pero from the main tunnel, meron pang around 200 branches yan being rented out to different associations. And makita nyo yung 200 na smaller tunnels na yun. Kunwari, ito may mga gate yan. So other people from other associations won't be able to enter those private, privately owned tunnels. Tapos yung mga may-ari ng tunnels na yon, they pay a monthly rent of 1,500. So imagine, may main ka, tapos yung 200 tunnels mo, hindi lang yan horizontally nagbabranch, vertically, ganyan. May mga instances nga daw na nagkakarinigan, na nagkakasalubong na pala yung dalawang tunnels. Naririnig na lang nila na nagtitik-tikan at sisigaw, oy, amin yan. Ganong mga bagay-bagay. And in this mine site, mining shafts can be as deep as 1,200 feet. Sinasabi ko ito so you can picture kung ano ang itsura underneath. Kasi pag tinignan natin, we would see surface mines. We have no idea what's going on underneath. And ayun nga, may complex web of mine tunnels. Okay, so some other photos. Ito sa labas na to, yung sinasabi ko kaninang surface mines. Sinasabi ko kanina na may makikita kang maliliit na butas and when you zoom in, ito sa photo na to, ito siya, makikita natin na may tao sa loob. Ganyan. And very narrow itong mga tunnels na ito. Kaya yung ibang tawag sa mga tunnels na ganyan ay dog holes. So other photos from Barangay Ukab in Itogon. Yeah. Ito ay pinagtambakan na nung nakuha doon sa open pit mine. Itong photo on the right is quite special kasi while talking to some people from the community, tinuro nila yan, sabi nila, yung area na yan, wala na yan sa ilalim. So aware sila doon sa ganong situation in the area. And of course, sabi ko nga, if you're going to look back on what happened in the past and what's happening now, risks are actually building up. Naiipon sila. So hindi lang siya parang snapshot ng, okay, this area is landslide prone. Hindi lang ganyan. May paglala, may paglawak, may pagkalat ng risks. Okay, so how? Existence of old tunnels that are left unchecked for decades are prone to collapse, or sinkholes, gaya nung pinakita ko kanina, and the continued lengthening and extension of these tunnels. Ito yung third point natin, yung mining of backfills. Yun kasi yung pinakita ko kanina, some are, hindi na new veins Some are mining backfills. Kasi before, di ba ang practice is you will dig, you will get everything, di ba? Tapos yung tailings, ibabalik para to protect the integrity of the tunnels. Pero ngayon, itong mga subcontract miners natin, they are mining the backfills. Why? Because before, hindi ganun ka-efficient yung processing ng gold. So marami pang natira doon sa mga backfields na yun. May mga makukuha ka pang ores. Sabi nga nila, medyo lower yung grade ng gold na nakukuha from the backfields, pero the sheer volume of the backfields is enough to compensate for the low grade ores from those backfields. So, ayun, while meron kang ganun before, ito yung mga minimina ngayon. And small-scale mining activities, especially the surface mines, further compromise slope stability. So these activities combined with the inherent landslide susceptibility of the area pose a great risk to the community. Ngayon, saan papasok yung yung pagiging illegal ng small-scale mining activities natin? Mas walang safety measures. Kasi wala, yung iba dyan, mga fly-by-night operations. And of course, there's the issue of accountability. Yung sinasabi ko na nangyari nung 2018, nagkakaturuan dyan kung sino ba ang liable. For the mining corporation, wala silang kinalaman kasi abandoned yan eh. Labas sila dyan. Pero for the miners, yung mga mining associations na nandoon, sila sasabihin nila, paano nila hindi malalaman? Kung tutuusin, yung mga properties ng private mining companies, may mga security guard yan. So dadaan ka talaga doon before you're able to get in. So may ganung turuan. Yeah. Okay. So who's in charge? Sino ang dapat? Hindi naman. Pero my take on the current situation in Itogon is that iba-iba eh. Alam niyo yun. Sabi ko nga, may 3 key characteristics ang Itogon, pero yung 3 characteristics na yun ay governed by different agencies, different institutions. For example, mining permits are obtained from the MGB Regional Office. Ang MGB main, nag-issue sila ng landslide susceptibility maps. So ito yung yung galing sa kanila, at ito yung sa Itogon. And we would see na the entire area is in red. So parang how useful is this kind of map, di ba? Okay, nakakatakot. And then, so what? Pero kasi that's beyond their function. Hindi naman authoritative itong mga landslide susceptibility maps na ito. They are given to LGUs, and the LGUs are tasked to formulate their DRRM strategies. Pero the thing is, for example, in the case of those of the big mining company, private lands nga yun, and secured yung lands na yun. So kung tutuusin, hindi naman siya na-access easily ng LGU. So kung halimbawang may mga projects on DRRM ang LGU, hindi rin talaga covered lahat ng areas within Itogon or within a certain barangay. So, and sabi ko nga kanina, small-scale mining is illegal. So sinong mag-check if the miners are conducting their activities safely? Wala. So yun, so hazardscape is produced amidst the gaps of this system. Walang integrative na lens that would protect, for example, the local livelihood system, and at the same time adjusting the limitations of the environment, ganyan, while keeping the production of gold bilang mineral rich siya ongoing. So iba-iba, kalat-kalat sila. Okay. Sorry, nasa halos 7 na pala. I'll make this quick. Sabi ko kasi we'll also discuss risk perception. So I guess the question now here is, are miners not afraid of these hazards? Ayan. So ito na yung sa risk perception part. I did a survey kasi of 148 miners and asked them about different social natural hazards nga in the area, ano. And kasi ang tendency natin is sasabihin, ano ba, ang mga Filipino, ano tayo, we have this tendency to just accept things, ano, and think na parusa yan ng Diyos or nagalit si inang kalikasan, ganyan, or and other things that seemingly irrational or cognitively dissonant, ano. Pero kasi ang based on the survey, we would see that the minors are actually some, ano, maybe not all, kasi nga sabi nga kadalasan nabibiktima ng gas poisoning ng tunnel collapse ay migrants, but you would see people from the community who are very familiar with their surroundings. So when the minors were asked to rate, ano, the level of threat of different hazards, level of threat, and their perceived personal exposure, ang number one sa kanila is earthquake. So for most of them, fresh pa yung 1990 earthquake, ano, and they are very much worried na maraming damage ang nagawa yung 1990 earthquake underneath. So sa kanila, ano, yun yung sinasabi nila, no, na isang earthquake lang na ganun kalakas, alam nila na it would be really devastating. So sunod lang sina landslides and yung mga sinabi ko kanina, ano, na tunnel collapse. And interestingly, given their ranking of different hazards, palagi mababa yung perceived level of exposure nila. And one interesting thing about landslides and other social natural hazards nga, dito, they worry about it, pero sabi ko nga kanina, seasonal naman kasi siya. So imagine, may buong taon ka na pwede kang magmina, and then may certain periods ka lang na hindi. So, andun pa rin yung, di ba, why leave the area? And of course, hindi naman ganun kadaling option yung iwan, yung lugar, ano, kasi saan ka pupunta? Ano magiging hanap buhay mo, ano. Pero factor, no, yung ganun na hindi naman lagi siyang nangyayari. Except for earthquake, pero kasi ang earthquake, hindi naman talaga siya nape-predict. Tapos, they were also asked, what are the main causes of social natural hazards in the area? Palagi ang ano nila is rainfall. Secondary lang ang mining and deforestation. Next, ito rin, ano, very important din itong perceived worst effects of social natural hazards nila. Because as we can see, for them, the worst effect is, yeah, they destroy houses and buildings. They destroy infrastructures. They affect livelihood activities. Ang cause, yung pagiging fatal ng mga hazards na yon ay fourth lang. Tapos they were asked, they were given several different risk perception statements. Ito hindi ko na iisa-isahin. If you have questions about this, pwede nyo akong i-email or yes, email na lang or siguro mamaya kung may time tayo. Pero yung mga responses nila doon sa mga questions na yun, lumalabas based on multiple correspondence analysis. These are the, ano lang naman yun, ano, general trends lang yung pinapakita niya. So these are the most common perceptions of social natural hazards. So yun nga, sabi ko nga, it is natural and they are exposed. So this is for this one, ano. Tapos yung iba, they see those hazards as beyond their control, pero they are confident that they know exactly what to do when the time comes and that they are employing indigenous knowledge. Tapos yung dito, low hazard perception, so hindi siya ganun nakakatakot, hindi sila vulnerable and hindi sila exposed, and they are using indigenous knowledge. And then for this one, again, we are talking about common patterns of risk perception, low perceived exposure. So mining worsens, they don't know what to do, pero the location of their house is quite safe. So makikita natin itong mga yung may ganong confidence about relative exposure, ganyan, ay common among those who have been mining for more than 20 years. Ayan, yun nga. Lagi nila sinasabi, yung mga bago ang mas prone sa accidents. And we also have to take note that migrants, especially the more recent migrants, tend to occupy marginal lands compared dun sa mga mas nauna na mas nakapili ng mas maayos na lugar. Okay, so some conclusions. Both large and small-scale mining activities have changed the landscape of Itogon. The mining hazardscape is being reproduced by the continued dispossession and exclusion of small-scale gold miners in terms of legal access to mineral lands, which are still largely privately owned. Moreover, due to lack of legal recognition, miners are subjected to unequal relations that exposes them to unsafe conditions. Traditional mining method is no longer practiced as indigenous miners are forced to integrate into the new relations of production. So knowledge and experience in the context of informal livelihood inform risk perception. So one important factor is the temporal aspect and the perceived non-life-threatening characteristic of those hazards. The impact of small and large scale mining, ito depende, if you would ask large mining miners mining in abandoned mines, they would say na their method is safer kasi they have the facilities, mga ganyan. Pero unlike dun sa mga surface miners natin sa labas. But if you're going to ask the surface miners, they would say na mas delikado ang ginagawa ng mga subcontract miners kasi they are mining out nga the backfields. Pero bottom line pa rin, if you're going to look at the plight of the miners, of those people in rural areas where unemployment is high, where access to farmlands is also limited, they see risk associated with lack of livelihood as more pressing than the seasonal risks posed by socio-natural hazards in Itogon. Ayun lang naman po. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ocampo, for taking us on a journey on Itogon landscape and hazardscape. These apply to the mining situation in the area. We will now proceed with the open forum. We encourage our attendees to type in your question in the Zoom chat box or in our social media accounts for those watching over YouTube. So, Lou Anne, presentation, you mentioned that artisanal and small-scale mining is only allowed in areas that are designated as minahang. From Oni Martinez, she asks, who sets the boundary for minahang bayan and who designates these areas in the LGU?
Sorry, nag-cut ka, miss, naputol ka saglit, miss.
Nag-announce naman si aking Zoom na internet unstable daw. So, sige. So, the question is, who sets the boundary for minahang bayan and who designates these areas in the LGU?
Yeah, ina-apply siya ng mga mining associations. For example, in the case of Itogon, may mga identified areas sila kung saan pwede. Tapos ayun, chine-check din naman ng local government yung viability ng lugar. Tapos tsaka nila i-apply. Pero yun nga, may mga requisites kasi doon. Kailangan na member ka ng association, magbabayad ka ng certain fees, and then yun yung ipapa-approve. And minsan hindi rin siya na-approve lahat. Like yung isang minahang bayan na recently approved sa Itogon, nasa 64 hectares yata siya, pero mababawasan siya kasi may portion doon na pasok doon sa patented land ng mining corporation.
And then also during your presentation, you showed a top view of the landscape with the mines. And it would be interesting to see a layout of the mines in an underground landscape. So a follow-up question from Oni is, would it be possible to map out the tunnels underneath based on the miners' knowledge? And are the residents aware about the existence of, even if they are not involved in the mining activity?
Actually, may tinanong akong geologist about that. So kung sabi, kung talagang gustong imapa yung nasa ilalim, kailangan muna ng geophysicist kasi hindi accessible lahat. So may special na methods kang kailangan gawin to know where the tunnels are. Siguro pwede siyang gawin using local knowledge. Pero ang problema is, medyo magiging challenging siya kasi kailangan mong gumawa ng collage. Kasi ang familiar lang yung miner kung ano yung napapasok niya kung alin lang yun dun sa association nila. Pero wala silang idea dun sa iba. Plus, marami nga na mga surface mines na talagang halos random yung pag-identify. Hindi man random, pero kalat sila throughout Itogon. And ayun, hindi ang map din na maipo-produce ay mas magandang 3D kasi nga hindi na lang siya talaga horizontally nag-branch. Iba't ibang na yan. At hindi lang din yung mines na kinukuhanan ng ng ores. Even yung mines nga ng yung mga diversionary tunnels nila ganyan. Kailangan din. Although yung iba may may backfill, so mahirap din sigurong i-access. Familiarity ng mga taga doon na na non-miners, may general idea sila, alam nila kung nasaan yung kung saan may tunnel. Based na rin sa accounts ng mga kasamahan nila na nakakakuha ng information. Pero very general, yung location lang and yung actual status, wala silang way to know which tunnels are compromised, which are not. So talaga, sa totoo lang, delikado rin yung sitwasyon na to. Parang may isang interviewing nga ako ng statement niya, isang malaking accident waiting to happen ng Itogon. Kasi isang malaking earthquake lang talaga, lalabas at lalabas yung ganong condition sa ilalim.
Okay. So we're talking now about the residents, the community. So the next question that we have here is, what are the implications of national mining policies to IP communities who are mining in the area even before the policies were implemented? And that the mining activities as well as the land are an integral part of their cultural sphere or identity?
Very good question, napakalaking bagay ng laws natin, especially yung past laws. Kasi starting from the application nga of mining patents noon, doon pa lang, nagkaroon ka na ng dispossession wala, before, di ba, alam naman natin yung idea na community held yung mga yung parts ng yung cordilleras ganyan. Pero nagkaroon ng privatization at privatization pa ng outsiders. So malaki yung implications. And sabi ko nga kanina, especially doon sa area na sinasabi ko na owned by a mining company, wala lahat ng mga mas recent na laws natin. Hindi pasok dyan. IPRA, hindi. Kasi 1997 ba o 1998 ang IPRA. Pati nga yung di ba, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, pero sa mas recent na natin, yung public lands ng government, ganyan. Public lands belong to the government, tapos yung to the public. Pero yung resources din, essentially, di ba, sa government, para kahit may gold sa hindi hindi sa'yo yung good. Sa mga mining patents, so even underground ay considered as private. So yun yung malaking challenge nga kasi hindi pa rin sa kanila eh. Imagine ilang years ng abandoned yung mga mines na yon. Yun yung nire-request nila na na gawing minahang bayan. Pero hindi basta inaalaw. Kahit ang yun, siguro to answer din Oni's question earlier, may mga ganong cases na as long as part yan ng property, private property yan ng company, hindi nila subject yan sa approval nila kung i-give up nila as minahang bayan. So may problema talaga ng ng pag-claim ng ancestral domains through IPRA dun sa lugar. May mga CAD-P doon pero mas malayo dun sa mga sa mga mine sites mismo. So basta yun.
All right. So nakita naman natin presentation na yung mining is really a capital activity, and we have a question about the mining financiers. So there are actually to the next question from Oni. First, what is their legal identity? Who regulates subcontract mining? And what are the schemes?
Okay. Ma'am Cathy, choppy ka ha. Sige, may base dun sa mga sino yung mga financiers? They could be anyone. Ako, if I have the money, I can go there now and say na I have the money, who wants to work with me, work for me, ganyan. Okay lang. Regulation, wala. Kasi in the case of yun dun sa mga abandoned mines, nagmi-mediate I think, MGB, pero mas mas transaction between the mining company and the subcontractors. Mas ganun yun. Yung sa labas naman, yung mga financiers ng mga surface mines, mas lalong wala yun. Kasi wala, illegally. Walang nagmo-monitor, ganyan. Hindi sila required na mag-submit ng anything. So, mas siya, unregulated. Dagdag ko lang din siguro magandang point din dun sa question kanina about ancestral domains. Isa rin sa mga interesting dyan sa kwento ng Itogon is kahit daw yung mga Ibaloy at Kankanay nga na nandoon, hindi man lahat pero in essence mga migrants din naman sila. Pero sabi ko nga, may mga, especially dun sa dun sa mga, may mga minahan tayo. Pero away from those mine sites, may mga ancestral domains pa rin talaga.
So yung next question natin is that, given that there were large mining companies na operating in the mining area of Itogon, were you able to find out in your research if these companies provided alternative sources of livelihood to the local as part of their corporate social responsibility program to prevent them from pursuing small-scale mining?
Okay. Sige, masalimuot din na answer para sa tanong na yan. Let's start with alternative. Yung sinasabi ko kaninang Akupan mining project, that's actually a way to legalize the access of private mines by the small scale miners. Pero generally ang alam ko kasi nag-declare sila ng bankruptcy. So yung mismong so yung mismong pagpo-provide ng livelihood noon, ang alam ko marami talagang nawalan ng trabaho. Pero as part of their corporate social responsibility, nag-build sila ng roads, may mga school sila. Kasi kahit yung, especially noon na very active pa sila, tapos I think kung ilang 17,000, I don't remember exactly the figure, pero thousands of workers yung pinag-uusapan. Nag-create din sila ng mga schools, ganyan, ng mga ganung mga bagay for the family of the miners. Kasi yung iba doon na nakatira. nag-provide nga, actually, isa sa nabasa ko, nag-provide sila ng yero, ganyan, dun sa mga miners to build their own homes within their properties. Kaya lang, hindi nila dinadagdagan and discourage ang mga miners noon to buy their own materials para hindi sila mag-expand ng mga tinitirahan nila. So, may mga ganon nung booming. Pero after nung yung sinasabi ko kanina na nag-stop sila, wala na akong nabalitaan about that. Tapos ayun, may mga sinasabi silang budget sila for mining rehabilitation, ganyan. So far, wala pa naman akong narinig dun sa course ng aking study na nag-rehabilitate sila. Ang mas naririnig ko sila na tree planting activity. So ano ba yun? Yung may mga ganun na may mga ganung token initiatives sila as part of their CSR na.
Mm-hmm. And then, in terms of social relationships naman, may nagbago ba sa social relationships nung community before and after the present form of mining? And interesting din na malaman kung meron bang children miners sa area.
Okay. Sa communities, may nabasa rin akong accounts about mining communities noon. Yung kasagsagan ng mining, sasabi ko nga na nag-build ng school para sa mga families. And yung mga nagstay, may mga fond memories sila of that time na nakakalaro nila yung ibang mga anak din ng mga miners, mga ganyan-ganyan. And ang reklamo nila is now, labas-pasok ang migrants na. Kasi before, di ba, isang pamilya, sama-sama sila. Yung sa system ngayon, labas-pasok, very mobile itong mga migrant miners natin. So, marami na rin silang hindi kilala, yung mga ganyan. So, may ganung may ganung consideration. Plus, they see these migrants as competitors, kalaban sa hanap buhay. So, ando doon yung distrust. Ganyan. Sa children, sa mga minahan, at least sa mga napuntahan ko, wala talagang, parang isa lang yung nadaanan ko na 14-year-old na nandoon. Tapos sabi niya, nag-work ka ba dyan? Sabi niya, opo. Pero parang, best siya, yung runner, ganyan. Hindi yung talagang sa loob ng minahan. And I think very conscious din, to a certain extent, yung mga small scale miners nga sa Itogon, kasi they want to have their livelihood activities legitimized. So hindi rin as much as possible sila nag-e-employ ng child labor. At least sa mga nakausap ko and based din sa mga nakikita ko. Yung mga families nila nandoon, may mga bata sa minahan, pero hindi yung pumapasok. If yun yung, mamiyani yun ba yung Pero yun, may mga bata, may mga pamilya doon sa mga mining communities. Yung doon sa 2018, hindi puro miners yung naapektuhan nun. May mga family members, anak, kapatid, asawa, nakasama nila doon sa area.
Mm-hmm. And then kanina we were talking about making a map of the mines. May nagtatanong lang din if will it be a good idea to try and introduce the participatory 3D mapping in making a map of both the old and new mines in the area to not only help the LGUs in educating the people and help in the disaster risk reduction management?
Actually, malaking bagay talaga ang participatory. Especially given nga how mining is being done. Sabi nung nakausap ko noon, may mga old, parang kasi tinanong ko, alam niyo, may mapa ba kayo nung mga tunnels ninyo dito sa abandoned mines? Meron naman daw ha. So, pwede, kung meron man, it's a good start. Yun nga, malaking bagay na kung sino yung mga pumapasok sa mines ngayon, they have the information to build on those existing maps. As for the miners outside naman, ayun din, mas mahalaga kasi walang ibang pagkukuhanan ng information kundi sila. Kaya lang yun nga, sabi ko nga, hindi kasi siya, unlike yung dun sa sa ibang participatory mapping siguro na knowledge ng community na kumbaga a group of people who share the same information, ganyan, pwede mo matriangulate or something. Ito, very specific to certain groups and individuals yung ipoprovide na information. So talaga kailangan ng kailangan sigurong ma-plan maigi, ma-strategize, and makuha rin yung commitment nila to participate. Kasi sabi ko nga, medyo diskumpiyado rin sila pagka nagtatanong ka about their mining activities. Thinking nga na, bakit ka nagtatanong? Anong agenda mo? Taga-DENR ka ba? Yung mga ganung mga bagay-bagay. So, it could be done and maganda siyang gawin. Pero yun, kailangan talagang paghanda ang maigi.
Ma'am Cathy?
Yes, Eman.
Actually po yung PGS with UNICEF, we did 2 participatory 3-dimensional mapping in 2 barangays in Itogon. Hindi po with kinalaman dun sa mining talaga, pero yung traditional na overall na DRR po yung tinitingnan natin. So 2 barangay po yung natin. May mga mining communities din na, kasi yun naman yung karamihan ng kinabubuhay nila. Yung naging challenge po namin doon, bukod sa mountainous yung area na napakataas ng 3D map na ginawa namin is yung barangay nila sobrang lawak, hindi concentrated sa isang lugar lang yung population. So ang hirap gawin, hindi namin anticipate kaagad yun. Buong barangay yung kinonsider namin. Tapos parang yung naging resolution na lang namin is to create separate 3D maps of the different sitios kasi sobrang lalayo ng pagitan ng mga sitio sa isa't isa, so nananalipay din. So yun po, I think naging interested din naman silang gawin sa iba pang barangay, kaya lang ito po ay with the help of Cordis in Itogon. Hindi ko lang po alam at hindi ko na rin na-follow up kung na-replicate pa rin po nila, pero ayun, nagawan po natin with PGS dun sa Itogon po particularly.
Man, kailangan ng iba pa pailalim.
Pababa naman, hindi na pataas.
3D mapping talaga siya. Na hindi lang surface mapping, pati underneath the surface ang kailangan nating ipakita dun sa 3D maps natin.
Why not?
And then yung last question dito is that in the mining life cycle, closure and reclamation are considered the last and most important stages, which also leads to the sustainability of the area post-mining. So do you think these corporations who once operated in the area failed to activate these last steps, which eventually led to the persistence of small-scale mining?
Yes. Marami silang hindi na nagawa. Yun na nga lang sa open pit mines nila. Actually, makikita nyo pa siya sa pagka ginugel earth nyo. Ando doon pa rin yung mine tailings, ganyan. Abandoned na siya as is. I think ang isa sa mga proposal doon ay gagawin na lang siyang dump site ng Baguio City. Pero syempre, umayaw yung mga residents ng Itogon. Pero hindi talaga na-rehabilitate. Kung ako tatanungin ninyo, at base rin naman sa aking mga nakausap, yun yung nirereklamo nila. Hindi naman talaga na-rehabilitate. At kung tutuusin, tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung mining activities. Sabi nga nila, ganun ka-greedy, yung nature nung kasi parang ayaw talaga nilang bitawan hanggang kaliit-liitan na natitirang ores doon. Nagagawa pa nilang pagkakitaan through subcontracting nga kasi may share yan 60-40 ganyan. Kaya hindi rin natuloy yun doon sa isang site kasi ayaw pumayag ng association na 60-40. Pero wala kaya rin ayaw nilang bitawan kasi meron pang makukuha yun. Parang kahit sa kanila hindi pa end ng line yung current na situation ngayon ayun. So in terms of rehabilitation talaga, as base doon sa idea na, kasi sabi ko nga kanina, may mga tree planting activities naman sila, may mga ganitong mga bagay-bagay, ganyan. Pero are those enough to rehabilitate nga, to decommission the mines, ganyan? Well, kung base sa akin pagtingin, hindi rin. Kasi nga, yun nga yung pinag-uusapan natin ngayon. Tuloy-tuloy lang because may mga traces of past activities na hindi naman nagawa ng solusyon para maging safe yung lugar na yon. And mahirap silang habulin kasi nga, that's their land eh. Yung sinasabi ko kanina, it's beyond the control of the LGU. Kahit ng MGB kasi kanila yun eh.
All right. So once again, Luan, thank you very much for sharing your research and for giving us much of your insights during the open forum. And to show our appreciation, the PGS would be giving a certificate to our speaker for sharing her valuable insights and expertise this evening. Eman, would you like to show our certificate of appreciation? So this is given to Lou Angeli Ocampo, PhD, for sharing her insights and expertise as virtual resource speaker for the talk Mining Hazardscape and Risk Perception as part of the PGS LS 2021 held on May 14, and this is signed by Joseph Palis, Yanni Lopez, and Emmanuel Garcia. And with that, we are at the end of our program. I would like to call Professor Joseph Palis, the convener of this lecture series, to give the closing remark.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and even more greater thanks to our speaker, Dr. Lou Angeli Ocampo, for that wonderful eye-opening, and certainly for me at least, um, new, novel way of looking at the environment. May I just mention two major things that I, at least what were mentioned by Dr. Ocampo. I think one of the things that really stood out for me was the competition for labor between the local workers and the migrants. And some of you who may have done research about what it means to be insider, outsider, or in the case of maritime anthropology studies, Pangayaw and I forget the name in Ilonggo about what what the native name is. Tumandok, sorry, Pangayo and Tumandok. This also resonates quite well with the life worlds of the miners in Itogon. Also, another thing that I wanted to maybe highlight was, and Dr. Ocampo has mentioned this very well, was the unequal relations between miners themselves, not just between migrant and local miners, but also the miners in general and the institutions that govern this mining operations, and how Hazardscape became an offshoot of so many of these inequalities. And I believe maybe the intersection of so many factors from institutions, stakeholders, the miners themselves, community, local population, and research in the case of Dr. Ocampo, all intersect towards our complicated, probably complex understanding of risk perception and hazard. So thank you very much for bringing this to our attention, Dr. Ocampo. At this point, I would like to uh, wait for the next slide. uh, Maybe this is some, okay, I can just continue. There's a call for membership. Maybe Ma'am Kathy could just continue this. I would rather talk about the other upcoming topics.
Okay. So if you are interested to become a member of the PGS, the organization has an open call for membership. And for more information, please go to the PGS website, www.phgeographicalsociety.org. And then the PGS Lecture Series is an ongoing event. So we would like to request for your feedback to help us prepare and improve our future events. Kindly answer the short survey after this session. The link will be posted in the chat box for your reference. And then to watch previous sessions of the PGS Lecture Series, please go to the YouTube channel of UP Diliman Department of Geography. The recorded lecture for this session will also be posted in the same channel. And finally, I would like to call on Professor Palis once again for an invitation to our future event.
The next one that's going to come up 2 weeks from now at exactly the same time, 6 p.m., happens on May 28th. Dr. Soledad Natalia Delisay, former chair of the Department of Anthropology, will give a talk that called Cultural Memory for DRR, and that will call from so many research and field sites she has visited and conducted research on. So stick around for that one, especially. And in June, although we will have a monthly lecture series in June, July, and August, even if classes are no longer, at least in the regular semester, are no longer being conducted. So stick around for that one. It ranges from mapping bird communities to DRR related research in Cebu. So I hope you could join us in those lectures. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Professor Palis, for the invitation for our upcoming events. And before we end this online meeting, we would like to request our participants, our wonderful attendees, for a group photo. And this is the time when we request you to please turn on your video camera. All right.
All right,
So
everyone ready? At the count of 71, no, 3. At the count of 3, okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's have another one. Okay, at the count of 3 again. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much.
all right. So thank you very much for attending the Philippine Geographical Society lecture series on mining, hazardscape, and risk perception. We look forward to your attendance in succeeding sessions in the upcoming months. Right, have a good evening, everyone.